Dungeon Meshi is a series based around the themes of love, hunger, personal motivation, trauma, and healing. We see so many characters throughout the series that are dealing with problems and issues that can vary from "my sister was eaten by a dragon" to "I helped cultivate a dungeon that doesn't allow people to die because I can't handle the idea of people I love dying." But what makes this series very interesting is that no matter what issue a character has, the story never truly dismisses what baggage and trauma the character deals with. In fact, a good number of them do their best to use those traumas to push them towards better outcomes instead of letting it hold them back. We obviously have a great example of someone unable to move past their trauma with Thistle. After losing the king, Thistle never truly accepted the fact that people he loves will die and ultimately helped cultivate a dungeon where no one can die. He needs to protect and control everything in this dungeon because this was his home with the king. This was their country, their home. And if he lets anyone else die, he has to face the morbid reality again that the king is dead and everybody he cares about will die too. But on the other hand, we have someone like Senshi, whose history with the dungeon and his previous party left him a great deal amount of trauma, ranging from not feeling good enough to be of any help to his party, to being haunted by the idea that he was fed the remains of a former party member. Obviously, this kind of trauma leaves a lasting impact on a person, and for Senshi, it kept him tethered to the island and the dungeon. Even though all that personal pain he went through, Senshi came out of it and used that pain to prepare himself for life in the dungeon and to help others. Now, the reason why I love Senshi is because he's kind. Obviously, there are a lot of times where Senshi is a little bit of a brat and causes issues, like when purposely setting off traps in front of Chilchuck, ignoring the warnings from Laios about the Kelpie still being a wild and dangerous monster, and fighting Marcille about the ethics of using magic as a shortcut even when the real method is much harder on the party. But he shows his kindness by being considerate of others through his cooking, his emotional support, and his experience within the dungeon. Without him, the party would be struggling much sooner and would probably have suffered another party wipe by the time they reach the dragon again. I believe Senshi is the heart and soul of this party, and his actions from the very start allowed the party to feel more prepared for what lies ahead of them in the dungeon. Whether it's from a bomb-ass meal he makes from a monster, or emotional support through a difficult time, Senshi is the bedrock that keeps everyone moving forward one step at a time. Throughout the entire show, we see Senshi cooking multiple times with the monsters that the party faces. With the help of Laios, his better half, we learn a lot about the complexity of the monsters in the dungeon, what their ecosystem's like, their habits, and how we should safely cook them. Though this started with Laios wanting to save money by not buying food but instead making the most of the dungeon, Senshi was the experienced cook and survivalist that helped make it into a reality for the party, even if Marcille hated every second of it. Senshi would explain how to prepare and cook monsters, making sure that each dish was as delicious, nutritious, and safe as possible for everybody. Though this didn't save Laios from getting parasites after eating uncooked worms, Senshi wants to make sure everyone has a proper meal in order to be at their best while in the dungeon. He knows more than anyone how dangerous the deeper levels can be if you are not prepared or careless with your diet. In order to avoid the fate his old party suffered, he learned from the orcs and from lived experience how to survive in this dungeon full of various monsters. It's through these experiences that he learned to appreciate the natural cycle of life for all things, including monsters. Senshi has a love and deep understanding of monsters in the dungeon and appreciates their place in the various ecosystems of each floor. They all serve a bigger purpose and allows the dungeon to function and thrive as a whole. From the smallest bug to the largest kraken, every monster has its place, and Senshi understands that. Because of his lived experience with the dungeon, all the traumas he had endured with his old and current party, Senshi values life for all things. I think this also shows in some of the choices he makes throughout the series too, where he gives back to the dungeon by cleaning it, never greedily taking more than he needs, and caring for the people and monsters dwelling inside. By showing his gratefulness, he avoids the downfall of most adventurers in this dungeon: greed. Looking back at the episode where we find out Senshi's past with his previous party, he makes a comment that I think really strikes to the heart of what this dungeon is. He says, "It tends to be a lot more lenient towards those who don't ask anything of it, like the orcs. Once you want something from this place, it bears its fangs." The last point I want to talk about that I love about Senshi is his adverse feelings towards magic, especially resurrection magic. He views magic as a shortcut in life that robs the joy of doing something yourself, even if it takes longer or it's harder because you didn't use magic. He constantly butts heads with Marcel about magic, but I think they both come to a better understanding with each other's point of view after some time together. Marcel learned that magic is not always the best option and can lead to unexpected results that could hurt in the long term, while Senshi learned that magic is a tool and can be used to help when it's needed, much like any other tool he's mastered over the years living in the dungeon. The biggest and most interesting part of his reluctance to magic is his stance on resurrection magic. For this, I 100% agree with him. The dungeon is unnatural and breaks the cycle of life and death to suit the dungeon master's needs. It's one thing for a fantasy setting to use resurrection magic to keep characters alive, but Dungeon Meshi loves to explore the natural versus unnatural side of fantasy, where the focus is on what characters choose to do and how it's portrayed. Senshi knows that every time resurrection magic is used, the caster is breaking a taboo of nature, returning the dead back to life. He's one of the only characters in the show that openly talks about it so plainly and so adamantly against it, which I really respect from a moral point of view. Though his disdain for magic in general is a character flaw of his, I think it's one of the major things about his character that helps him stand out and adds depth to both him, the party, and the world. It shows that there are people who can see the bigger picture and how the natural cycle of life should be. Because of that understanding, it highlights the trauma Thistle went through to create such an unnatural place in order to never face the mortality of his loved ones. It's honestly beautiful how one aspect of this show can affect how I view another part of the story. Senshi is a kind and complex character that I love very dearly. Ever since I first saw him, I knew I would love this goofy-looking guy. But as I started watching the show, I realized how deeply considerate he is of everyone around him. I admire people like him who take time to understand things and people, appreciating what they do and respecting those differences. After seeing the range of his knowledge of monsters, his extensive cooking experience, and his willingness to help where he can shows the kind of man he is. He keeps the party fed, safe, and constantly changing for the better through his kind actions and moral support. Senshi is the heart and soul of Dungeon Meshi, showing the true strength of consideration, kindness, and a good meal. If you made it this far, I wanted to say thank you for watching. I wanted to make a video dedicated to one of my favorite characters from not only Dungeon Meshi, but in anime in general. I love Senshi for a lot of reasons, but the trope of showing love and consideration through cooking for others, sharing a meal with them, and teaching them really warms my heart. For a lot of the characters in this world, they focus a lot on power, subterfuge, and survival by any means. Senshi truly feels like he's the epitome of what these characters should be doing instead in order to live and flourish inside the dungeon. He's one of a kind, and I truly can't wait to see what he does in Season 2, because I know it's going to be amazing. Once again, thank you all for watching. Please tell me what you think about Senshi in the comments, and let me know if you even like the video. I appreciate all of your support, and thank you, and I hope to see you again. Take care.